Hey everyone, and welcome to our channel. British Armed Forces are facing criticisms from US officials for its current state. Today we delve into the challenges of the British military, exploring shrinking forces, recruitment struggles, and implications for national security. The British forces could participate in Operation Iraqi Freedom, which was started by the United States in March 2003, even when they were already present in Afghanistan as part of the Herrick mission. There were still about 200,000 military personnel, about 100,000 were in the British Army alone. 20 years later, the British forces have shrunk by almost 30%, according to numbers submitted to the House of Commons, following countless reforms, outsourcings, and other strategic evaluations aimed at achieving more with less. Thus, the British Army and the Royal Navy have seen their strength decline by 31% and 21%, respectively, while the Royal Air Force, RAF, has dropped by 40%, with only about 3,200 airmen. Nevertheless, it appears that this does not stop the UK from staying in NATO, since it contributes about 20% of the resources mobilized for the Steadfast Defender exercise, which was initiated this week with 90,000 military personnel and is said to be the biggest since Reforger-style exercises in the 1980s. However, even at 140,000 fewer soldiers and with no reference to a high intensity, the UK will likely no longer sustain the same degree of participation as it did in 2003, especially because its military forces still struggle with hiring and retaining personnel. Currently, the British Army consists of roughly 76,000 individuals, the lowest number since the start of the 19th century. In 1990, twice as many soldiers served in the land forces of the United Kingdom. According to the present intentions of the government, the size of the British Army will be decreased to about 72,000 in the future. Looking back 30 years, the UK maintained a substantial army consisting of about 1,000 Challenger 2 main battle tanks, FB-510 Warrior infantry fighting vehicles, and over 1,000 FB-432 Bulldog armored transport and reconnaissance vehicles for support. Surprisingly, from 1997 until 2020, the UK did not deliver a single new armored vehicle to the army. The British Army's size continuously declined as defense spending was lowered further. As early as 2010, the British Army had reduced its Challenger 2 main battle tank strength to 227. 10 years later, in 2021, the British Army opted to cut 89 Challenger 2 tanks, leaving only 148 Challenger 2 tanks for the future. Just 148 Challenger 3 tanks will completely replace the Challenger 2. This drop in numbers was to be compensated for by better responsiveness. But General Sir Peter Wall, Chief of Staff of the British Army between 2010 and 2014, was skeptical. "We have reached a point where we can no longer go any further without seriously damaging our skills and our chances of success on the battlefields of the future," he said while news budget cuts were looming. He wasn't the only one who had doubts. The patrician rate of the military forces is 3-to-1 recruit, according to Conservative MP Mark Francois during a recent House of Commons Public Accounts Committee meeting. He said, "This is the patient bleeding on the operation table," adding, "We can't carry on in this manner much longer." Meanwhile, there are undoubtedly operational ramifications to this crisis in hiring and retention. The Royal Navy is considering mothballing its 2 amphibious assault ships and has had to expedite the decommissioning of 2 of its Type 23 frigates due to a shortage of sailors, which raises concerns about the future of the Royal Marines. The efficiency of the British forces has been questioned by military leaders in the United States, raising concerns about this situation. As U.S. Army Chief of Staff General Ray Odierno did in 2015. "Now we have a British brigade integrated into a U.S. Army division, whereas previously we had a British Army division working alongside a U.S. Army division," he said. A high-ranking American general was quoted in 2023 by Sky News as saying that the British Army was no longer a high-level combat force. According to them, in a private conversation with British Secretary of Defense Ben Wallace and other officials of the United Kingdom last fall, one of the highest-ranking American military leaders stated that the British Army is no longer listed as a top-tier fighting force, unlike the United States, Russia, China, and France, but rather refers to countries such as Germany and Italy. In light of the Ukraine war, the United States signaled to the United Kingdom that it must forsake its objective of decreasing military spending. According to sources, increasing the combat preparedness of the British ground forces will take a decade. Sky News emphasized that British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak will not be able to live up to expectations as a wartime Prime Minister during the conflict in Ukraine unless the authorities increase the country's defense budget, which is currently £48.6 billion, $60.2 billion, by at least £3 billion, $3.7 billion, per year. Do not halt the process of downsizing the army, and do not loosen the rules for the purchase of weapons. According to the television station, the British Armed Forces would run out of ammunition within a few days in the event of intense fighting. In addition, the United Kingdom lacks the capability to defend its airspace against major missile and drone attacks conducted by the Russian armed forces in Ukraine. Sky News said it would take the United Kingdom 5 to 10 years to prepare a division of up to 30,000 soldiers supported by tanks, artillery, and helicopters. Moreover, 30% of the soldiers of the United Kingdom's armed forces who are on high alert are reservists who cannot be mobilized quickly according to NATO requirements, as reported by the channel. Sky News drew attention to the fact that most British armored vehicles, including tanks, were manufactured 30 to 60 years ago and will not be replaced in the next years. However, Secretary of the U.S. Navy Carlos Del Toro delivered different remarks to the Royal United Services Institute, RUSI, on January 25. The American official did criticize the British defense strategy, which is unusual at this level. Del Toro says the UK should evaluate the size of its armed forces to address the dangers posed by Russia and the Middle East issue. To be honest, I think that investing in the British Navy are essential, especially considering the immediate challenges that the US and the UK are facing, he continued. Furthermore, he recommended that London re-evaluate the British Army's organizational structure. The U.S. Navy Secretary also stated, in the U.S., we have continued to invest heavily in our national security, despite a challenging economic environment. Any decision to spend more on the British Armed Forces is a matter for the British government. The UK and the US have a tight military connection, so although American leaders frequently call on European countries to increase their defense budget, sharp comments about the British Army are rare, according to The Guardian, which was the first to report Del Toro's remarks. Do you think the British Armed Forces will be able to retain its competitiveness in the future? Let us know in the comments below. And if you like this content, please subscribe to the channel and share and like the videos.